Okay, so I want to welcome everybody on this cold Wednesday night in Toronto. It is Wednesday, January 22nd of 2025 as we record this Dance Career Info Session, which is a little bit of a misnomer because, as I said, it's going to be more about storytelling. We've invited two amazing guests who I'll introduce very soon to give their stories about transition, the stories of being a student and then saying, I want to do this, I want to dance, had to do to become, I'll put it in quotes, professionals in the world. We don't always have a lot of this information available. There are wonderful organizations like the Dancer Transition Resource Center, and they provide programs like On the Move, which help emerging dancers learn about this very thing, about information on getting into the career of dance. And they do this annually across Canada. And from Dance Immersion's perspective, we have been for 31 years producing, promoting, and supporting dancers and dances of the African diaspora. And as part of that programming, we do spend a lot of time and resources, of course, on presentations. So we're bringing professional dance works to the public. But we've always had workshops and educational programs, including a youth arts program in West African drum and dance that ran for many years. We have had several mentorship programs, both choreographic and also the administrative side of dance. And we've had various educational programs, workshops that are offered, yes, for professionals, but also for youth. But as times change and needs change in communities, we've started to develop more youth programming. So one example is a video mentorship series that's coming out at the end of April called Thrive. And so we've asked several Toronto-based Black artists to talk about dance, to talk about tips on resources that dancers can access, on the business of dance for emerging dance artists, for tips on crafting and developing your dance work, tips on self and community care, and tips on working with collaborators. So that video series from Dance Immersion is coming out toward the end of April. So of course we will be promoting that. We also have on February 1st, our first ever official youth showcase. So we're bringing together Black-led studios and groups that teach youth dance. We're bringing them together to present their works, and we'll be doing more of those presentations going forward. So connected to that, we wanted to do this evening to talk to artists who've been there, who've been the students that they are, and talking to them about how they do this difficult transition and what are some tips, what are some tricks, what's some advice, and maybe even answer a few of your questions in the chat. So welcoming our guests tonight, I'm going to read a little bit of their bios for you. Lua Shayenne is a dynamic creator who intertwines contemporary narratives with dance, song, and storytelling. Lua is also the artistic director, choreographer, and performer with Lua Shayenne Dance Company. And through this company, she envisioned and launched the Yensa Festival. It's a biennial event celebrating the diversity of Black women dance practitioners and offering year-round programming. The company will soon premiere Waves, which is a new dance film, alongside new stage works. Lua is on faculty at Toronto Metropolitan University's dance program and shares African dance, music, storytelling, and culture with organizations and schools across Canada. Thank you so much, Lua, for joining us. And also Raoul Wilke, a prolific and multi-talented artist from a plethora of dance forms to visual arts. Raoul shows how we can seamlessly tie the movement to the people. With his focus on forever being a student, he's gathered lots of knowledge and inspiration to bring in new ideas, as well as pay homage to original ones. He's mentored dancers both locally and internationally. He can be found sharing his love of dance also at Toronto Metropolitan University, where he teaches the importance of the individual. He's won numerous events and has 2 Dora Awards. one being for a company he's currently with, Holla Jazz, and another for his show, Young, Gifted, and Jazz, which was in collaboration with us, Dance Immersion. He continues to further his research and bridge the gap between the root form with a fresh perspective that is related to the present day. Welcome, Raoul, as well. So as you can see, our guests are professionals who continue the learning, continue the teaching and mentorship throughout their careers. So let's jump in. We're going to go to our first question. I'm going to pose it to Lua first. And it's going to be to tell us the story about your career background, paying extra attention to your training and development there, and then those next steps where you first stepped into the professional career.
Of course, I forgot to unmute me. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me again to me on Dance Immersion. What a pleasure to be here. Well, okay, so my trajectory is quite interesting. I actually moved to Canada to pursue the performing arts. I used to watch a lot of Fame and I identified with Coco because at the time I lived in Italy and I was born and raised in Côte d'Ivoire, and then at the age of 12, moved to Italy. And then I came here to Canada to visit my aunt. And I used to watch a lot of Fame, and I told my mom I want to go to the States, but to Juilliard's, because I think I knew that the only correspondent to what I saw on Fame was Juilliard's. And my mom was like, no. But they were considering sending me to Canada. Long story short, the financial situation of my family changed. And I came to Canada to actually pursue a dance career. So I always knew I wanted to be a dancer, I wanted to be a performer. And I redid what you guys called, I think at time it was called OAC, right? Grade 13, right? Something like
Yes.
so I did grade 13 just so that my transition to, the next stage would be smoother. Got into York and then I was just like, no, York is not the place I want to go to. And then I went and checked out Randolph Academy for the Performing Arts. And that's what I was like, yeah, this is the kind of school I want. I want to dance, I want to sing, I want to act. And got into Randolph by some kind of miracle because I had no training. And they did tell me over the summer, go train. And yeah, I graduated from Randolph Academy, survived. Um, I survived it. I didn't get kicked out. And then from there, it's still, everybody was like, you go and audition usually after, it was like that was the mentality, go audition and get into the biggest musical. My English was still rough. My skills were not quite there yet. Anyways, I wasn't too sure if musical theater was what I wanted to do, and very few people were getting like maybe two people maybe got into big shows. So, I wasn't like the most talented person or anything like that. And I started taking classes. And then there was this, I don't even know how I ended up at COBA. At the time, there was a company called Collective of Black Artists called COBA. And, I started taking classes there and they had West African. I was like, oh, wow, beautiful. That's my heritage. And then that's when Bakari Lindsay, the artistic director, said, you should come and join the apprenticeship program. And I was like, okay, and I did, that also gave me another student visa. I graduated from Koba, and actually during that time, I also met Sanya Abu, which is here. And by the end of my apprenticeship with Koba, we founded a group called Ijo Voodoo with Sani and another dancer who has her company, Rashanik Jabari. After that, my transition was Rashanik and I founded a collective. And then finally, after that, both her and I had different visions for what we wanted to do. And, she went and started her company. And then I finally started what is called now Lua Shayenne Dance Company. Yeah, wow, I had to think about that. And that was 2011. Yeah, I during that time, I think the transition 2007 and 11 is when I could got back to Canada. It was a time where I also realized I needed to go back home and really understand, my heritage. So it's during COBA that I fell back in love. Not fell, I just fell in love with my heritage. I lived in Ivory Coast, but I didn't take dance lessons. You dance at parties, etc. And I'm actually from Ghana, so I never learned the language in Cote d'Ivoire, or it's not like I had relatives that I could dance with. So basically, I spent like 3 years traveling back to Guinea, Mali, Senegal, and Ghana. And I just trained and trained. I was so hungry. I'm still hungry, but and just came back and I've, continued to study since then. I definitely haven't looked back. There are so many dances and styles that I don't know and rhythms that I still want to learn. My training encompasses ballet, jazz, Horton technique, West African from Mali, Guinea, Ghana, and Senegal, Sabar. I did it way back, and now I'm doing a little bit because I'm training again. But I would say, my heartfelt, yeah, my best experiences definitely have been in Guinea, where I've been going back, and Mali. And one of my mentors, Farah Tolno, has been key in the development of my skills in West African from Guinea. And then currently we're training and we're collaborating with Ayodele Drum and Dance from Chicago, especially the assistant director, Emania Fatima Detri. Yeah, I think that's a good summary. That's it for me.
Thank you. That was a wonderful summary. And actually, I needed to jump in on 2 points. First of all, shout out to Fame because I also was becoming professional. I was going to be Debbie Allen. I was going to be in front of the class with the
Yeah.
stick and, and telling everybody to do it again.
Mhm. Yeah.
So shout out to Fame. And also, I don't know if you remember this, Lua, but I do. And it's going to come up a bit later when we talk about, advice and things to do. But I had my own dance fitness studio around, it was like 2025 to 2011. And I remember this young woman walking in, full bravery, had no connection with me whatsoever, and walked in and said, hi. Just so you know, I'm a dancer and I do fitness. And if you're hiring, please let me know. I wish I could have. I didn't have enough money at all to hire anybody else. I wish I could have. But it's part of this, no matter what stage you're at, you might be introverted, you might be shy like me, you might be but there's sometimes the only way is to just go for it. And I never forgot you. And then we connected, of course, through different different ways over the years. And it's about that gumption is like, okay, I just got to try it. And you were just as even newer to the country too. You were just like, I'm gonna do this.
I was fresh off the boat.
Yes.
100%. Good language wise. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, thank you for bringing up that great memory to me. Wow. Yeah, there's certain things I forget, and I'm just like, oh, wow, that's, yeah, full circle.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that. And so I will ask Raul the same thing, your career background, your training, and then when you said to yourself, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go for it. And what you did at those for those first moments.
So my background, similar to Lua, I moved from Zimbabwe when I was 16 years old. So I moved during the winter. So as soon as I arrived, I had to get to go straight to school. So I don't think I was. I think I was here for like a week of like seeing Canada, and then they were like, "Yep, time to go to school." And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't even know where I'm at." So it was like a big shock. So an extroverted kid moving here made me super introverted. So I just kind of stayed by myself. I sat at the back of the classrooms and kind of just observed and just did my notes and things from there. I met a few kids that were dancers in the school, and they had a crew named Slick Six. So I joined this crew. It is a crew of Filipino boys, and they showed me this rec center who this gentleman named Jay Rebel. He's this black guy with locks, and he just looks like the coolest guy ever. And after school, I would go and practice with him, and he would teach us how to b-boy. It was like an after-school program for kids that didn't have anywhere to go. So I trained with him after school, and then because I fell in love with training, and I didn't really have friends like that, I just trained during lunch, and I trained after school. So that was kind of my regimen for the school year. And we were in the crew, so we kind of were like popular kids because we were like the Slick Six dance crew. I was the only black guy, and it was like five other Filipinos. So we were like the cool kids. But then as soon as school finished, it was like, okay, now I don't know where to go. So then I kind of went back to like my street life, just being outside, hanging outside of convenience stores and just doing stupidness until I was still kind of dancing then, and I was like the cool kid to like these like street kids, and they were like, "Yo, you got to audition for So You Think You Could Dance?" And I was like, "You serious?" They're like, "Yeah." So I had my joggers, I had my 6XL t-shirt because at the time that was the coolest stuff to wear, which is it's a crazy chaos. Anyways, I go to So You Can Dance. I don't have a I just have a PR right now and my old passport. So I'm like, okay, I go with my PR. I go to the back of the line, and then I meet some people, some really cool people, and we start talking. Then I realized I actually didn't carry my card with me, so I had to go back home. And then when I came back, I met a friend. His name was Sean Diocampo, and Sean Diocampo is one of my crewmates now. We formed the Moonrunners together, but he was in the back of the line. So he says to me, he's like, "Yo, man, you new here?" And he was this very short Filipino guy with long locks, and I'd never seen that before. We in Zimbabwe, we've never seen anybody with locks. I had my curly hair, big curly hair afro, and he had those locks. He was a short guy with skinny jeans and locks, and a Filipino. And I was like, "What the hell is this? I've never seen this before." And he's like, "Yo, my man, you got to come with me to these rec centers. There's amazing dancers." So he took me to this rec center called SYC and Tropicana. And at that time, well, they fed us and they gave us a mirror, and we would practice for hours and hours and hours. And it was dope because we were all just kids. There were crumpers, there were b-boys, and there were poppers, and we were all just in a space with one mirror and one speaker, and we would share the space. And sometimes we'd collab styles and make up random names. Like we'd be like, "We glitching," and the crumpers are like, "We doing this." We just started making up random names because we don't know what the hell we doing. And then from that rec center, we ended up getting a job with the police, and we did a program called Crumping Out Crime, and they would send us to these at-risk high schools, and we would teach dance to these kids. So that was like my first professional job, which was cool because we had relation to us being kids, having a space to go to, and then we became the kids to show these other kids that, hey, this is a good outlet for you. So we did that for a couple years, and the crew started building from this rec center, and because we went from three or two friends to becoming eight or nine friends. And we would get matching t-shirts, and we'd walk around the city, and we'd go to events with matching shirts, and people were like, "Wow, these are the coolest people ever." And people wanted us to perform for schools, and we were getting so many jobs just because we looked super cool, and we were just humble, and we were just friends. We were just friends that liked dancing, and I think that was infectious to people because could relate to the fact that we were just us. And that's kind of how it developed my career from there. But there's other things in the works. But yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we have time to get to those too. Um, Also, a few points of connection. First, I wanted to jump in and say, you said the key phrase, which is what tonight is about. It's like where to go after school, like after whatever the training is. Where do I go? What do I do? And then you mentioned, which we'll talk about later too, this you fell in love with training. That's another key to the dance professionals. It's all of us who just love learning. You want to learn more. Um, and there are times, of course, where you can't necessarily focus on all of that. You're creating, you're building, you're doing, but there's always this return, as you both talked about, to whether it's travel or different types of study as your professional. But you mentioned Tropicana. I was a teacher at Tropicana Community Services, and I was teaching the little kids, though I was the Caribbean dance teacher, and I couldn't bring in live music. They didn't have the budget, so I had to, use at the time it was like the tape player or the CD, whatever, they had both. And the kids were there. I think they were, kind of forced to be there, but they, in the end, enjoyed the classes, and it was such a great environment to be around. Didn't necessarily have the access, but were so keen to learn and just so talented, and it's all just sitting there waiting to come out. So as soon as you said Tropicana, I was like, oh, another point of connection in, in Toronto. So first of all, thank you both. It's not easy to concisely go back into the past, and there's sure difficult memories, good memories, but to put it together so well. I wanted to jump into then, you started to mention a couple, but some of the hurdles you may have faced in that transition, but also what you did to navigate them. It's like, so yeah, where do I go? What do I do now? And you started to touch on them, but if there were any specific hurdles you wanted to talk about, or anything still in that transition you could talk about there where you had to navigate some issues. So this time I'll start with Raoul again. So we'll jump back with you. And again, there's time, so feel free to talk about whatever you feel we need to hear about that transition.
Yeah. I think the biggest hurdle, especially in my starting career, is I was already a full-time dancer because I wasn't trying to do anything else. And I think financial hurdle is like one of the biggest hurdles, as we always deem the term starving artist, which is like the worst term you could all refer to us as, but it's like the common term. And I think that was also like one of the things that affected me the most, because a lot of my friends that were around me were working jobs, so they were good, and I was always the one kind of trying to pick it up, but so in love with my craft that I was okay with like not being as financially stable as them. But I remember speaking to a couple of my friends one time, and I was like, okay, it's a lot of dance is trust, and sometimes the gift will come to you somehow, some way, but you have to have a lot of trust, but also you have to put in a lot of work. So I trusted in myself, and that was one of the ones where I was like, it was at a point where I was like, okay, I should get a job because then I know I'll be good and I'll just take a break from dance. Or I was like, I could put 100% more in this, and I know I can do it if I believe, and if I manifest, and if I network properly. So that's what I did. I told my friends, no, I can change this, and I can be the dancer that makes it. So I started networking. I started doing auditions. My first job, actually, I did an audition for Kevin Armsby, and he was looking for dancers, and I had never performed in a theater performance before, and I had never done no choreography like that. I was straight street dancer, like to the core, and he had put out a casting for dancers, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I remember bumming it so bad. I didn't do good at all because I had no experience whatsoever. But he seen something else inside of me, and he hired me, and I got the job. And I was like, that was the first thing of like that trust. And I started being in more companies, and I was like, oh my God, my network is so much larger than I could have even dreamt of or imagined, by taking that challenge to go try something new, and trusting that I could eventually build myself into a career. Because again, once you hit that crossroad, it's like, am I willing to keep pushing as far as I can because I know something will come out of it, or do I push far and then nothing ends up coming out of it? So it's like, it's how much you're willing to trust yourself, how much you're willing to manifest, and also network, and then see what's happening around you. Really be aware to what's going around you, and to be honest, that's what helped me, because I'm such a people person. I just started talking to people, and everywhere I went, I made friends, and then those friends followed me, and then it became a cycle of, hey, that guy, and then I became that guy. So that's kind of what it is. It's just trust, and building your network, and being passing through that hurdle of like, okay, financial stress, what can I do to overcome that? What are the next steps I need to take to not have that be the forefront? Then I kind of get lost in that. It's like, how can I kind of bypass that, and be okay with it, but trust that I will get out of it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Again, you've said so many keywords there. Of course, financial, for dance is always the key, and the young people will hear from their parents. Not everybody, but many will hear, you have to get a real job, or can you go study something where you'll actually make some money? I'm just worried about you and your future and, being able to support yourself. And so some folks will hear that, and it can be difficult to go. You want to impress your parents, you want them to be proud of you, you don't want them to worry, but you have this dream and this vision guiding you. I really appreciate that you talked about the networking. And again, I can vouch for Raul making friends everywhere. When Young Gifted in Jazz was being built, this is Raul's first full-length stage work, and we were doing it at High Park, and the folks that came to support Raul from everywhere, from out of the city, it was quite beautiful. And some of them you would mention were from the past, and they came. They just, you made all the friends. And then you talked about trying something new, it doesn't mean that this is where I want to go necessarily, but you never know what's going to come from it. You never know who you'll meet, what experience you'll get, even if it's a one-time thing and maybe it wasn't for you, you don't do it again, but you'll learn and you can apply it. So many wonderful in there. And an interesting route. Again, you said you're very outgoing, you like talking to people, and you weren't going to go the I'm going to also get another job route. I did the opposite. I was the opposite. Quiet, don't necessarily want to talk to anybody, and it makes me nervous. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this full-time job and this full-time dance job. And the burnout was high, but it's a good example of do you. There's whatever's in you. There's no wrong way to do it. It's what's going to be best for your way of being and your needs. And it can change. We have to remember we're not committing to a life sentence if we decided first to, like for me, I'm gonna get this full-time administrative day job and then do the dance in the night. I could change that. And same with Raul anytime. He can say, okay, that's it. I'm going to work in the office or wherever. So it's to remember that go with what you need, go with your dream, do all the things that Raul said, but no, you can change that if circumstances change. I can't wait to hear from Lua, who has also had this has a full-time career, but also a company and a festival, which came later. So I will turn it now over to Lua for the same thing, talking about any challenges, hurdles, and how you got over them or past them.
Yeah, it's interesting how we all have such different paths, but there's like certain key things that are that intersect. I think, okay, there's maybe, I think definitely two, three, maybe two hurdles that when I read your question that I noted. And I think obviously for me, not being a Canadian citizen was definitely huge. Coming here as an international student was definitely a challenge. And I wasn't a permanent resident yet. So it's so funny that, Raul, you're saying that, you came in too, but at least you were like a resident, but that newness and understanding how to navigate this new world that I could barely speak, in. But yeah, but it made me, like, on one hand, it also made me value and be very clear and intentional as to if I really wanted to be an artist. Like, I was always very clear. I really appreciated the blessing that I had to be in Canada and live my dream, and that really kept me going. Like, there was no room to fail. And when I finished school, I got told to go, right? And so I came back as a visitor, and then I had to figure things out. So you finish, you graduate, and it's like, what's next? And I actually went more into so I started that. So that's how I started the apprenticeship with the apprenticeship program with COBA because then I had a student permit and became a student again, but then was training. So that was a different type of more, focused training. And then I also could, continued in the theater world. So I joined Toronto Playback Theater, and that just opened up a whole new world for me as well because, Toronto Playback Theater is community theater. You listen to people's stories and you play them back on the spot. And it's a very specific type of theater. And that was amazing because like I worked with so many different communities, from homeless to women's shelters to youth, and then I got to train youth as well. Actually, started to like mentor the Toronto Youth Playback Theatre Company, and that's how I got my work permit. So like I had to like jump from one thing to another in order for me to finally apply for my permanent residency because and the whole thing took me 10 years. I know it's way too long, but that was just the way it was because as a performer, I found out, oh no, I can't just get a job. I would have had to get like a big, big, big movie, that paid huge amounts of money. So, I had to find a different way. And in the process, I kept on praying and saying, is this the right thing for me? Should I stay here? But everything kept working out for me to stay. So I was like, okay, well, then I guess. Yeah, with I think that that was definitely part of the one big hurdle. And then closer to becoming, I guess, a professional dancer. As I was navigating, the world of black dance companies. Well, I guess at the time there were two, I guess, there maybe there were some minor ones, and then there were some African dance groups. I just didn't fit in, there was no unity among them. It was all competition, and it was like patriarchal, all men led, not women led. And that's just a reality that, now I'm like, no, I want to talk about it because that was just the reality of it, and it was constant. And I just felt there was a huge lack of support. So I was like, man, like this is like I started discovering the kind of work I wanted to do. And so that is how actually I started my own company. And I think as time went by, I discovered that I was a creative. I was just not just a dancer, but I was someone who liked to create. So as I started, my own group, because it wasn't a company yet, I was choreographing already, even though I wasn't good enough, and no one thought I was ever good enough. But I was, it's like, I think the biggest hurdle was definitely not having, anyone within the African dance groups encouraging me, or the blank dance companies encouraging me. And I already was an outsider, but it's interesting because me coming from the outside, I was just like, well, whatever, I'm just gonna do my thing. If you don't like it, whatever. I've always been that kind of a person. Um, so over time, when I started the company, I was able to find amazing women to support me, and that's when I discovered, oh yeah, okay, there's people out there are women out there who support one another. And I realized, okay, who I want to really nurture are the women in my life. And unfortunately, I did have to go outside of Canada to find African mentors who would support me, and that's where I found Farah. And Farah was just like, wow, I was just like, wow, this international renowned genius who just gives out selflessly. And now Ayo from Ayo Daily Drum and Dance, which I love. She is just like an amazing woman. So yeah, I think those are my two biggest hurdles, I would say. And I think what they highlight is the importance of representation, both from a racial, aspect, and also from a gender aspect. Like you really need to see yourself on those stages. And I do think, Vivine at that time, like it was the only Black dance organization, and Vivine is the only person actually who presented us, right? Because I know Tamia then eventually, you joined, but that was huge because that gave me, my first opportunities. And yeah, to be out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, as you said, different paths, but so many intersecting things with communities. And you both talked in different ways about how many different communities you worked with or ended up connected to through dance or theater. And then I did want to highlight your mention of theater. Dance in Canada and other places too. And I'm just going to speak here. I was born and raised here, so I'll just speak of what I know is has been put to the bottom of the art forms. It has to do with gender discrimination because it's womanly. It has to do with religious feelings towards sex that had developed. And if you're moving your body this way, that's very sexual. It has to do with huge racism and cultural genocides that took place. And so theater was able to thrive. Music is able to thrive. Of course, not every type of music, but there's a much more vibrant community around that, and writing and poetry, and then there was this dance. And so we are very fortunate compared to a lot of other countries to have public funding for the arts. The fight that has gone on, I was someone who fought internally and externally for groups like Vivine led Dance Immersion and others, the Cobas, the Ballet Creoles, who push and push. That's part, it was all wrapped up in it. Racism, anti-womanhood, anti-dance was all there. And it's important to understand that in most places, dance isn't separate from the theater and the music, and it's not separate. And so we may have those silos here, but as Lua was saying, oh, song, theater, dance, it's all there in different ways. In crump, in hip hop, in all those forms, the character, which is theater, the character is just in every aspect of it. The clothing, the what we're wearing as visual art, it's all together. And so just because we may see those silos here, I'm hoping for young folks like you both did to go your own way still. This, you know what you want to do. You know that these things can go together. So reaching out to theater groups, auditioning for a theater play where they say we need some folks who can move. These are all things that emerging dancers can do to expand their network while learning, reach these new communities, reach new individual artists, people who might become a mentor. And as Lua mentioned, if you don't find the mentor right here, there is going to be one or two or three. It might take a search. Just think of it as like any relationship. You dated someone, didn't go well, or maybe in your community, there's not a lot of people to date. So you go try over here in this neighborhood, or that, you have to expand if you're not getting what you need. That's a really challenging hurdle. I was a member of a couple of those companies that Lua was mentioning. There's not been support. I've just been a person who, I have stuff I want to do and I'm just going to do it. And that's what it is. And so a reminder from all of us to also your strengths, understand that they are all valuable, even if you might not see others jumping in to say you're great. Sometimes they don't want the competition from you. So if you came out of their studio, if you came out of their program and they see you going to do your own thing, they might not be encouraging you, not because they don't think you're good, it's because now they see as competition instead of watch our community grow. Happy that there's more presenters of Black dance. This is great for all of us. There's no competition. We all grow together. And so I know for a lot of students, I've heard it time and again, they feel like their lead teacher or the studio owner or the group owner is possessive. That's the word I'm looking for, is possessive of them. And they find that there's guilt, feelings of guilt if they're moving on, but at the same time, there's no way for them to grow by just staying there. So I love both of your stories. It's sometimes to grow, you have to step out, you have to step away. And the hardest part sometimes is not taking it personally when they don't support. It's not about you, it's about them. That is the key. It's so hard to remember, but it's tell yourself anyone treating you negatively or ignoring you or not supporting you, so much about them, not you. So thank you. I do want to go to one more larger question, then of course open the floor. Words of advice. I know you've already started to throw some in. You could also go back and fill in. There might be other parts of your story you wanted to fill in, but words of advice for those who say, students who say, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna dance. Now what things to look out for, and also if you wanted to throw in there advice for their caregivers or their teachers, because that's a key that a lot of the parents don't know. They don't have a dance background, don't know. They send their kids to the schools and lessons, but then they don't know what comes next. So if you have any advice in any of those areas, I'll start with Lua this time.
Yes, thank you, Tamia. Yeah, I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure, I my thoughts were clear. Yeah, the first thing, because I did that because, of course, not having had like, formal training, is take classes outside of your studio, or even if you're training. When I was at Randolph, I would stay and they had like evening classes. Take as many classes outside of the familiar environment with as many companies or people as to see where you fit as well, right? Not just to have new experiences, but this is going to allow you to see that. Go see shows, to see what you're naturally most attracted to. If you're not attracted to something, it's not necessarily, oh, it's not good, and it's just not your thing. That's it. I would also say, this is what I've always said, to me, I gave a great example. Don't be afraid to contact ADs, artistic directors, or choreographers or artists that have made it, etc., with a formal professional email, or going to meet them, going up to them to express your interest in working with them or their companies or training with them. And sure, they probably won't be like, yeah, sure, you came out of high school or whatever, and I'm gonna hire you. Maybe, maybe not, depending. But you can start by saying, hey, do you have an apprenticeship program? Or can I apprentice by just coming? Or can I, you start taking classes? So don't be afraid to contact. I think that that's the only way I've been able to get things done, because there was hardly, I don't know, an audition notice in what I wanted to do. It was the kind of thing you like, sit there and like, okay, I want to be a part of this, right? There's another important thing that was, sorry, there's something else that was real, I feel is really important, are the spiritual qualities and the moral values that will sustain you and allow you to have a full dance career. Resilience, dedication, training, respect, and all those values. I think it's not talked enough about. Like, I teach at Toronto Metropolitan University, and it's great that in this day and age we speak a lot about, health care, but I think it's important to talk about spiritual care as well. That is the base of, physical care, and psychological care. Like, I don't think like we talk enough about being patient and understanding what your path is. It took me a while to understand exactly within the realm of being an artist what I could do. It's like Raoul can draw, for example. Like, I wish when they speak to us as artists, like, they said, look, as an artist, you will have different talents. If you can sew, that's great. You can also sew some costumes. Like at the beginning when I had the company, I was like, with my sewing machine, I'd like put Cory shells on my costumes. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever it is that you can do, trust me, it will help you to move your business forward, because it's a business when you start, having a career. explore as many options that may not just be dance. As Tamia was saying, don't be afraid to sing. I know I can sing a little bit, so I love singing. Act if you have the opportunity. Take the time to discover everything that you can do, because I think that you can infuse your practice with it. Don't be anxious about making a decision right away. Leave room to be guided in the right direction. And for me, develop trust in the higher concourse and divine forces, whatever your spiritual practice is. I think that, whatever it is that you choose, it has to be aligned with your spiritual values. Because when you start making compromises on that, you're going to be unhappy. So you could get the biggest gig ever, but if you are miserable, is it worth it? So that's just a question you need to ask yourself. And then to caregivers, my last thing would be, again, I think it's important to instill values in the children, in your children, or yeah, they're your children, or whether they're biological or not, and so that they can find purpose in their career. To me, it's not about like, well, okay, well, I was just going to say, so for in my faith, the Baha'i faith, truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. So for me, it is crucial to align my career choices with principles that promote justice, kindness, honesty, integrity. So for me, maybe not for you, true success is not only material, but is deeply rooted in the development of virtues such as love, humility, service to humanity. Yeah, I think those are essential for personal growth and contributing, to the well-being of society. So those are my nuggets. My nuggets.
Amazing. Thank you for all of them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But also, thank you for mentioning the spiritual aspect, because that's another thing where we can get it stripped from our training here. Is the body, you do the body and do, but it's going to ground you, as you said, is the foundation for, yes, your care of yourself, for care of your community, and all of those moral values you mentioned. But also, I mean, it depends on, again, your spiritual practice, but your ancestors can be thought of as collaborators in your pieces and your work. So please, young artists, do not shy away from whatever your spirituality is, even if you do not have the support around you. And for, as you said, Lua, their caregivers, like all of those wonderful values you can instill in your children. Do not fear if they say, I want to be a dancer. It's going to help them along the way. And because you've instilled those things, they will be guided and they will make it, whatever that means to them, whatever their definition of success and making it is. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And you mentioned patience with your path. One time there was this event, and there were folks who practice or whacking in the event. And, someone made a comment, like, really, it was a really encouraging environment. And someone said, oh yeah, you got to go for it because you spend a lot of money on your face. You got to, show it off. And I said, oh, honey, I didn't spend any money. I woke up like this. And so they were all laughing because I'm so quiet. They were like, whoa, I didn't know you had that attitude. And I do. I'm so quiet. And they said, have you tried whacking before? I was like, no, I've always loved it. But they're like, well, why haven't you? I was like, and I didn't have a good reason except that I'm middle-aged. And they're like, and what? So, because I keep a dance practice going, but it's the stuff I continue with the different forms that I already knew. So in my brain, a new form at my age, and I'll just be too old compared to everybody and all this. And then I just started. And I found a form that couldn't be better for me expressing that part of myself, that persona. My persona now even has a name. And so at the age of 49, I started a new dance form. And so I didn't think I'd ever click with anything like this again when it came to movement. So as Lewis said, just the patience, your path will change. And I've been considered very successful in my different, areas of dance. But then there's this new art form where I'm the beginner. I am a total beginner. I am in the class with everybody's younger than me, but it's such a supportive environment. When you find your place, go for it, no matter what age, timing, whatever, it's going to happen. So thank you so much, Lua. And I will turn it over to Raoul.
Yeah, I agree with Lua on the fact of patience. And crazy enough, a lot of people just look at us and see where we at and don't understand our full stories. Like when I was younger, I didn't even think I was a good dancer. I didn't think I was a good dancer till 4 years ago. Till only 4 years ago. And I've been dancing over 14. I'm coming on 16, 17 years. I've been dancing 16, 17 years of my life. And only 4 years ago is where I truly felt like I'm doing myself justice. And it's only when I connected to like my spirit where I had a bigger reason for my dancing, like dancing for my ancestors and also losing people helped me really tap into my emotion, my emotional side and really dancing for these people that didn't get to continue their lifespan. So I dance for them now. So I have a deeper reasoning for why I move. And that's why now, 4 years later, I'm so much more connected to my spirit and my message. It's way more rooted in ancestry and spirituality. So I agree, patience is a huge thing because I was gonna give up so many times and I didn't. And because I'm still here, I finally found myself, you know. So I think patience is the biggest one because I think a lot of dancers also they see themselves and they're like, we're not getting these awards. I'm not where that other dancer is. And then you start to put yourself down. But if you just stay and just sometimes it's a long ride, sometimes it isn't. But I went for the long ride and I made it out. So don't question how long it is. Just trust in yourself and you eventually will find yourself. And that's the key. The key is finding yourself. For the caregivers, I would say keep letting those kids explore their creative spirit, develop multiple interests. Let them try things. Just get them moving. Get the mind working. It's one of the things I'm doing now. I'm exercising it a lot now, and funny enough, I don't even know. Sometimes I don't know who's watching me, and that's the beauty of it. Is when you exercise this interest, you don't know. Like I have two beautiful stories that happened that recently I just exercised my interest. So I started DJing during COVID because there was nothing else to do. I had a little sister, but it was about this size, and I was DJing at home. And I practiced for like a year, and there was no other reason for me to DJ, but I just wanted to practice. I just wanted to learn something new. I had nothing else to do. And I had a friend hit me up a year later saying, "Hey, I'm in one of your intro to house classes, and I actually run a club." And I would love for you to DJ New Year's. And I was like, what the hell? I got a job? I didn't even expect a job. I'm not ready for this. And I DJ'd a New Year's Eve party, and it was the craziest time of my life. I didn't ever expect that. I didn't think I would be playing. And another gift that was given to me, I'm very much now because of COVID, I've been very introverted in terms of my discipline and my training and how I move throughout the world. I was on the beach one time just enjoying the sun by myself because I typically would do that during the summer. And I had a pen and a paper with me because I like to journal and take notes. But I was like sitting there and I was like, imagine if I drew every day. I wonder what that would be like. And I did it. I drew every day for a year. And I had another friend contact me and said, "Hey, we would love for you to do a live sketch in front of an audience." And I was like, I just started. Oh my God, what's going on? And then my first gig, I sold my first drawing. I did a live drawing of Louis Armstrong, sold it for $300. I got paid, and then from then on, my artistry kept building to the point where I'm opening up a gallery this year. I'm gonna do a live gallery showcase, which again I never thought I would do. It was just an idea. It was just like, hey, I'm just gonna draw every day for a year and see what happens. And I got really good at my craft and ended up getting work. And then the last thing that I find is the most crucial one is showing up. And there's two things I'm gonna tell you how this worked for me. So last year I went to Montreal for a festival called Vernacular Spectacular and I knew they were bringing a legend, Chester Whitmore, down. Now my goal, I was like, yo, it's a legend. I don't care what he says. I'm gonna be the greatest student to ever exist. I was like, I just want to meet this person. I want to hear them talk, and that's it. And my life is good. I'm done after that. So I go there. Luckily, I knew the owners who was hosting the whole event. So they said, hey, we're having dinner a night before. If you can come a night before, you can have dinner with Chester. And I was like, oh my God. I'm so happy I know y'all because now I got an insight in. So I get there and it's I'm the only guy there. So they're like, Chester went to the washroom and he was there for a while. So they're like, they looked at me and I was like, oh, okay, shit. I've never met this guy. So they're like, hey, can you go check on him? I was like, okay, I went to go check on him. And then I ended up bringing him back. And then I was carrying his bags. And I was like, throughout the festival, me and him built like this uncle son or father son relationship because I was just looking after him and I was like the son to him. And we built this beautiful relationship to the point where he was showing me all these like exclusive tapes. He was like really on me, training me in so many beautiful ways to the point where next year I was teaching alongside him. And I didn't think that would even happen. But I showed up, I just carried these bags around, and I did whatever they needed me to do. And then the next year I was teaching right beside him just because I showed up. And I was like, I would never ever have dreamed that would even happen. Nor was I expecting anything. I just showed up to be the son and show up for my father figure, because I lost my father. So that was like a father figure moment for me. And I remember the last day me and Chester had built such a beautiful bond. I cried that day because it reminded me of how special it is to build mentorship or relationship with somebody and not see them just as the artist or the legend, but see them as the person. And I remember he said to me one time, he said, I'm just trying to find my people. And I remember how much that hit me and it made my dance. I remember I battled the same day after that day because I was a battle guest in Montreal as well. I battled with so much heart that people were like, what the hell is that? And I was like, it was that one word that triggered something else in my brain that changed how I dance. And it wasn't even training. So sometimes showing up in its own way is its own blessing, its own gift. So there's a few ways.
Wow. Wow. First of all, uh, amazing for everything you said and the examples you gave. The showing up and the mentorship, the intergenerational relationships. What I love about that story is that, we can get really down, and it's understandable that, what the elders didn't provide for us in terms of support. But you reached out in you in a way that wasn't necessarily again about the art, but here's this human, and who knows what's going to happen if we just connect in this way. And so it can get difficult sometimes. They might be busy, they don't know everyone who's around. And so that reach out in a way that just was unexpected could really lead to some amazing things between the generations. And when you talked about not ready, so important. We can feel that we get an offer, I'm not ready for this, or something comes, you're like, I think I might want to do this. You put it out there, and suddenly the big opportunity comes right away, not the little one, not the stepping stone, the big one. I'm not ready. You are. No matter how it goes, you will have learned, grown, developed as a person and in your practice. You can use that for the next time. You might think this is the biggest thing ever, but no, it's just the biggest thing so far. It's gonna get bigger if you show up and you take it and you say, I don't feel ready, but I must be, because this opportunity came to me. I must be in a way. And if I bring in those values Lua mentioned, all those personal values about respect for everybody around, the showing up, the being, if you want a good collaborator, you have to show up as a good collaborator and doing all that. If you bring all of that to each opportunity, it's going to go well. And yes, you might look back and go, oh, I wish I had done this. You would have done the best with what you have at the time, and you can apply that next time. The drawing, again, for, as you say, for the caregivers, like, look what can come. I saw it was Instagram. I looked on Instagram and said, so Raoul, do you want to draw the poster for the Young Gift in a Jazz Show? And hired him to draw, to make some art for it. You just don't know, and putting it out there. You might say, I'm an amateur. I can't put this on social media. But look what happens when you do. When you do that, it's you just don't know what can come. There's no such thing as perfect. You can spend all this time trying to perfect something at home, and it's never going to be. Put it out there, and get the responses, see how it hits with people, and you'll just never know. So those were incredible examples. Before I open it up in the chat, if anyone had a question or even comment for our wonderful guests, please feel free to put it in the chat. But I wanted to remind everybody that in addition to this being recorded, and we're going to put it up on the Dance Immersion website, because these stories are invaluable. Thank you both so much. We're not quite done, but I just wanted to make sure I said thank you for your open sharing. They are stories that will last and be helpful through time. So we want to put them up and interact in here and go, okay, and remember, it's always to remember, we aren't really alone. We will go through periods where we feel like it, but it's up to us sometimes. It's just this one little step you could take forward, show up to this workshop, show up to this something, and you don't know what can happen. You're not alone. So I really thank you for these amazing stories. And look how we all three talked and found points of connection we didn't know of each other before. And so sometimes sitting down, as Raoul said, for a meal with somebody who you just kind of know a little bit, or saying to a mentor, you know what mentors will love? They might not have a lot of time, but there was someone I really admired and needed some. I was like, oh, I wish I could have some of their time for their knowledge, and we always think, oh, they're too busy, they don't know me then. But I reached out with my introverted self and I said, can I take you for a meal? And they said, I've done that twice, actually. One person said, yeah, sure. And we went for this nice meal, and over food is such a cultural connection, to meet over food, and the conversations go in all directions. And the other person said, no, you don't have to do that, but let's meet over Zoom. I can give you 45 minutes. And my hand nearly broke off with the amount of, like, it was a master class, the amount of knowledge they passed. I was trying to I couldn't read all the writing afterward, but that 45-minute session just opened my mind. So they might only have 45 minutes, or they might want to sit down for a meal. But all of your stories and lessons remind me of that. I remembered things. I also had forgotten fame and those those sort of origins of spark. And I think that's important. These conversations, sit with folks, talk about your backgrounds, because you remember, oh yeah, that's why. Sometimes you'll need that. Sometimes you'll say, I don't want to dance anymore. It's too hard. It's too this, it's too that. And then you talk with someone just like this, and you remember, or you watch this video or others, and you go, oh, that's what I loved about this. Let me just take some classes with no pressure. I'm not making anything. I'm just going to take the class and be the student again.
Mhm.
And then the spark reignites.
Yeah, it's funny that you're saying this, because one of the things that, as you were speaking and Raul was speaking, I was like, yeah, I think the biggest advice too is like, yeah, you never stop learning. I think as long as you're staying humble and, over time, you really learn to leave your fears and ego at the door. I used to get, like, when I used to Randolph, that's how mad at myself I used to get. Like, I would stop dancing if I couldn't get the step. And it's funny because teaching at TMU, I've had a couple students who like get angry at themselves, and I'm just like, I know how it is. It's not going to serve you. It's not going to serve you, and it was hard for someone who had to learn everything, like, not having like that decade long training and all that kind of stuff, or, you're thrown into these classes and it's like, oh, got to learn it right away. And you're still trying to understand, discovering your body. But yeah, I think that yeah, you never stop learning. It doesn't matter what age. And it's so beautiful to know that, you can keep learning. And I got sick, very, very sick, like what, it's now almost 3 years ago. And, when you mentioned also, and even Raul, you were saying the same thing. I think it's important to remember that at every probably stage, you're going to be like, should I quit? Right? Like, I think honestly, it happens often, more often than you think. It's true, right? It's like, and sometimes it's over like nothing. It's like, oh, you didn't get this audition, or you didn't get this gig, or, they didn't ask you to be part of da 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 da. And you're like, oh, or aging or injuries, like getting injured is so, for a dancer, it's like death to get injured. So I think, yeah, it's just to say that, it's okay. You'll go through it, and the difficulties are really and truly what will make you stronger, because you will make discoveries during those difficulties that are just invaluable.
Yes, I mean all all of that. It's the word discoveries is just it's perfect because you're discovering not just, oh, it might be this form or this, it's yourself. It's parts of yourself that may have gone to sleep or may have you thought were gone, or you maybe never yet connected with at the middle age, that you just never brought forward yet for whatever reason. So discovery, and that just keeps the juice alive when you feel those moments. My body hurts, the pocketbook, the bank account hurts, the whatever, wherever the pains are. It's these little forms of juice, and if you don't have the money, it could be something online, and you connect. So sometimes still, even with the job, you might have money, so I'll look and I'll practice this. I'll look at someone's whacking routine and I'll just try it. I mean, I'm beginner, so I just, but even just doing that for an hour in my home, it it's there. And sometimes you have to keep that way. I was one of those very Canadian. My parents were immigrants from South America, but put me in the ballet when I was 4. So I've been dancing always. And the thing is, when my parents got divorced when I was 10, and so we didn't have money for me to continue the lessons. And so similar to Raoul, I went to the after school program. You can't imagine the different world that is from the ballet studio. It's the after school program. But it was so rich. It was people they just wanted to do something meaningful and weren't sure yet what that could be. So we were trying all the things, dance and these different dance forms. And there was a baton twirling class after school, and whatever they had to give us to keep us, to keep us off the streets or to keep us out of trouble. So it's this ongoing, can't afford it right now, but I just wanted to do it. You'll find a way. You might need breaks, and sometimes breaks are healthy, whether it's for your health or for an injury or not, or just like, I just need to rediscover my love of something. I'm going to go write poetry. I'm going to draw. I'm going to do whatever it is and take a break. And that's okay. There's such a fear we can get in dance. Like, you keep moving, you keep dancing, or, your body's going to fall apart. You're going to, whatever. But a pause. Trust all 3 of us. The pause is not, you're going to get back to what you're meant to be doing, even though they don't teach us that.
Yeah. I also wanted to speak into one more thing. Even I think also even now people listen to us speak, they're gonna think, your career is always just like this. I want to speak into the hurdle of like it's not always up. Even now you may see me and you see my social media and how I carry myself, you think my life is just like this. I'll tell you, not even that long ago, maybe like last year, I was doing so much work, but the return wasn't as financial as I wanted it to be. And so, because Toronto's so expensive, so you got to be doing 1,000 things just to survive. And I remember it was like almost into the new year, and I was having one of those like bad months. December was like a bad month, and I was there. I was crying on my couch. I'm like, I had such a bad month. This is not looking good. I don't know what I'm gonna do next month. I think I should stop dancing. I think I should get a job. And I was like having a moment, and I'm very much believer of gifts and the universe gifting you things. And I remember like for at least like 2 minutes, I was like having a ball out, like trying to figure things out. I'm like, this is not the legacy I'm leaving. And then 2 minutes later, I swear to you, Natasha calls me, Natasha Powell, one of my mentors. She calls me 2 minutes later, and I was already ready to like go put my resume into a job and go get a thing going. She's like, hey. I just got nominated for Joanna's, and I'm like so excited for her. I'm like, yo, Natasha, I'm so proud of you. This is the greatest thing for you. I'm like, this is so beautiful. I'm like celebrating her. And then she's like, I get to elect somebody as my mentor. And she's like, I've been seeing what you've been doing for all these years. And she's like, I want you. And so then she shared this Joanna with me. She got the main one and I got it under mentorship, and we received some money. And I was like, I remember that day being like, I could finally do what I had planned to do the next year. So my first initial goal was to travel and get my name out there. I bought a ticket to Amsterdam and I manifested. I worked on my mind. I trained, and it was like 400 competitors. And I was like, I have to make this top 24. This is the goal of mine. The dream can finally come true. I finally have the opportunity. 7 years later, I haven't been there since 7 years because I couldn't afford to go. And that was the opportunity. I wrote down in my phone a little manifestation. I recorded myself a few months ahead, before, and then I read it to myself a few months later, and I made that top 24. And then from then on, Young, Gifted, and Jazz was gifted to me. I got flown to Seattle to teach a workshop because one of my clips was sent because I was just posting every day, and somebody in Europe sent my clip, and then they sent it to somebody else, and then they were like, "We need to bring this person to Seattle," and I was like, "What the hell just happened?" So I was at my lowest breaking point, and then so you have to realize that we also still go through hurdles, even though I'm this up in my career, and you may see me as this dancer who's like doing so many cool things. Just know that I'm still going through these ups and downs, but I have so much faith and so much belief that the gifts always come back to me somehow. So I just want you all to know we're not like these like superheroes. We're real people, and we also feel things, but because we feel things, we move with that real feeling, and we do things genuinely and honestly, and we receive these gifts.
Thank you so much for that extremely important share. That journey that doesn't go like this, but instead can go like this, even if it's moving up, it's going like that. That is so important for everybody to know. And sometimes you see it in memes, but it's so true. It's right before you're about to hit the big thing is the moment you're gonna give up, all like without fail. Like, no, no, no. And then it's sometimes it's the same day, as you were saying, sometimes it's within the same week. The thing comes. And it comes, and we've all been there and been like, forget it, forget it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. How much more work can I possibly do? It's over. And then the next day, whatever, the next week, the thing comes, and it's just like that. So it's to have exactly what Raoul said. It's the faith and the belief, and that can get shaken. So we talk about, self-esteem and self-worth, but they're kind of two different things. Like the self-worth is the one that's more internal and steady. The self-esteem, hey, if we have a bunch of so-called failures in a row, our self-esteem can go down, but then it can come back up with other things going on. But if our sense of self-worth and our belief in ourself is there, then those dark moments are still going to come. But there's a part of you that just hangs on for that thread just long enough.
Yeah, and I think like that was something I had to really battle with because one of my parents was very hard and very like wanted the best for me, but was very like it didn't matter how great my grades are. It's like, well, you can you can get an even higher grade. So, I've always been so hard on myself. And then I realized also how self-destructive I was, and then how I was listening more to the people who were telling me negative things than to the people who were encouraging me. So it took me a while to understand, first of all, surround yourself with people who are supporting you, but also, and of course, do the work within yourself of, eradicating the self-destructiveness, which is like way worse than anybody else telling you that you're not good enough. And and then you realize, then you start surrounding yourself with people who are just like 1,000% there for you. And yes, it doesn't mean that there's never going to be people out there who are not supporting you, but I think that what you become good at is also filtering that noise. and then you just attract, the positive. So yeah, I think, there's so much self-work that needs to happen, and yeah, and surrounding yourself with people who are always that have your back, and want the best for you. So yeah, what goes around comes around for real.
It's so true. And you know, when you talk about the pressure to do well, it's like, yeah, Lua, you got 98% on the test. That means you could have got 100. You know, what were you doing? But we can internalize those things. And as you said, we could, let's say we do a performance and 20 people come up to you and just say, wow, that was so great. I'm so proud of you. And there's two people who are kind of like, those are the people we often focus on. It's like we had all this abundance of blessing, but these two were sitting there with their arms crossed. And, it's such a pitfall. But as you say, Lou, it's like we have to just, it's only the individual who can shift their mind to say, look at all this good, and
Yeah.
to leave those two behind. And then also, as you say, the surrounding yourself with supporters as we grow, especially that transition, let's say high school age to young adulthood, it is so key to
Yeah.
understand we want to hang on to some old relationships, and even people who are much older do the same thing, but hanging on to relationships that do not serve you, that where the person is not supportive. I'm not talking about, we can argue with someone in our lives, we might have a, bad period, but as you're saying, it's about those who support you and whom you support. You have to let the others go as hard as that can be, because it's like a weight that can just pull you down inside and outside.
Yeah, because when you're young, also, you're so sensitive. I mean, even when you're old, but I remember my first show. Can you imagine? Like, my first show, I paid for it with my money, like, paid for the theater. Like, I went into debt. So, and that was a mega deal. And then someone I admired like crazy came in and was like, that was not it. Literally, it was like, that's not it. I was just like, wow, could not have even waited 1 minute. Like, wait the next day. But in retrospect, and it's funny how this person now was like, wow, look at what you've done, has commented on social media. So I don't think it was like intentionally mean, and sometimes cultural, like Black culture. Gotta speak your mind. And I don't think the show was bad either. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that their expectation was off. I was this young dancer pulling off our first show. To this day, the dancers that danced that first show told me this is the hardest we've ever danced in our dance lives, because we were young. So we're like, I don't know how many African dance pieces we pulled off, like back to back nonstop. But, we had the stamina for it, But I'm just saying, I think that for the young people and their caregivers, listening out there, like now when I go and see, let's say, TMU shows, or, you go to the high school, like, when you go see your young kid, performing, just understand that there is a journey that they need to get through, and that, don't have expectations of them getting it right away, like Raul was saying as well. And like, you're saying to me, I think, yes, we don't want to sugarcoat things and says, "Oh, you're amazing," But at the same time, there has to be a balance with, yes, keep training, keep getting better, but also that encouragement is something I think as a Black community, especially, and I know everybody will be listening to this, but I think most non-Caucasian cultures, parents tend to be very harsh, on their kids. So please remember, that we do need the encouragement, and that, if your kid is determined, they will keep going through it. And if they decide to stop, that's okay too. So either way, it's not an easy journey to be an artist, but it can be super rewarding, super rewarding. And at the end of the day, we're happy people, because we've pursued our passion. We're not going to an office and we're not miserable. So I think that's important to remember.
Yes, thank you for that reminder too, for caregivers, that It's not well known about, again, dance careers in Toronto and in Canada, but dance in many other parts of the world, it's understood as something that makes society better. We're communicating non-verbally, we're communicating with the cosmos and sharing that with others across cultural, language barriers, everything. And there's the health aspect, not just the health, of course, of the fit people doing the dancing, but a healthy, vibrant community that it might be there's a drum circle and everybody, even someone who can't get out of the chair, you're moving along and we're doing it together. And the spirit in the room goes like this. Dance is part of a healthy society that values harmony, that values cross-cultural communication and learning. It is a valuable, valuable piece of society that's just as integral as anything else. And so if your child or the person you're helping care for has this passion, they will be contributing so much to the world by following their vision. So I am looking at the clock and I don't even want to stop this conversation, but we have to. I feel like this was just absolutely encouraging, inspiring. And I see Sani Abu, who's a wonderful elder in the community and has mentored and guided so many, nodding, because this share has just been helpful, even beyond emerging artists. Again, you might just need this reminder. Oh yeah, you might be my age and need this reminder. And to know how much has been contributed. And thank you also, Nicole, for staying on, our audience who had joined us earlier. It's also good to have folks to talk to, even though we're recording this. Your shares, your high fives, your hearts have been encouraging us along the way. And so I'll just end with a few reminders. We do have that Thrive video mentorship series coming out at the end of April. Really excited about it. It's a beginning because there's so much we can talk about, but we hope to add more videos to it later. But it's something people can watch and rewatch and access anytime. We also have our February 1st, 2025 first youth showcase. As Lua was saying, you're going to see folks performing outside of their studios or a recital for the first time. And the first time, some of them around other groups who aren't just part of their studio. Different levels, different ages, but just part of community coming together. We'll be doing more of those youth showcases coming up. And of course, we will share this wonderful recording. It's going to be up on our website very soon, and we'll let you know. Again, I can't thank Lua and Raoul enough for answering. I sent them 3 questions, but I wanted it to be storytelling, and you just came through way beyond what I was hoping and expecting. And I'm so glad to know more about both of you as we all journey forward. I am Timia Warren-Suri. I'm the curator and executive director at Dance Immersion, and I thank everybody for watching, listening. And if you ever want more access to Lua's work, Lua Shayenne Dance Company, Raoul Wilke, follow on Instagram. You'll see all the stuff Raoul is doing around the world, and Lua has a website as well, and you can find their info very easily at danceimmersion.ca. So thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.